Father, we pray for knowledge and understanding for teachers, pupils and parents. We pray that you will be with our teachers and pupils as they start a new school year. We pray that you will give the pupils tenacity as they seek for understanding and new revelations in their studies. Father, we also pray for parents, that they will support pupils by building a closer working relationship with teachers and staff. And this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. And that's really why we're here tonight, so that we all work together as our team for the best of your children and our pupils. We're joined this evening as well by Mr. Bazin, our Deputy Head Teacher, and also Mrs. Blake, the Director of Learning for Year 10. And they will be taking different parts of this meeting to convey extra information to you. So what's happening this evening? What are we talking about? The curriculum developments, first of all. Enrichment opportunities as well, happening across this year. Assessments, exams and study skills are also happening as well. Important dates for the year. What's happening with reports and parents' evenings, and also homework and remote learning. And then our tweaks that we've made to the rewards and sanctions within school, and also information about pupil wellbeing and mental health. I'm hoping that people can hear me. There's one question in the chat that says, is there any sound? There should be sound. If you can hear me, can you either raise your hand using the function on Teams or just type a message in saying that you can hear? Brilliant. Yeah, excellent. Seeing lots of hands going up. That's fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much. If you can't hear, probably the best thing to do is to leave the meeting and then rejoin, and hopefully that will mean that you can hear. Brilliant. 29 hands have gone up there. That's fantastic. Excellent. Right, brilliant. So first off then, the curriculum developments that we've got in school, and a couple of changes that have happened in school as well. We have switched the morning and the afternoon form times. So previously we had a shorter form time in the morning of 10 minutes and a longer form time, which was also assembly time, in the afternoon. We've decided to switch that around this year. And it just means there is a much more settled start to the day, particularly for all the assemblies, and messages can be conveyed at the start of the day. And it's proven really valuable for form tutors and form times, and to set the scene for the day ahead. A couple of other changes that have happened with lunchtime. We have stuck with the staggered lunchtimes that we had last year, not necessarily because of COVID, but because as the school has grown, it's just much more practical for us to do this. So we have a year 7 to 9 lunchtime for 50 minutes. Whilst that lunchtime is happening, the year 10s and 11s are in lessons, and then that switches over, and the year 10s and 11s then have their lunchtime. It's quite a nice perk for the year 10s and 11s because they've got much more space and obviously a lot more time in the canteen, with the fact that there are less year 10s and 11s queuing up. So it's a nice little perk for them. In terms of the curriculum structure, you'll have heard a lot in the media about lost learning. Now, lost learning is something that isn't just specific for the pandemic. Obviously, it's been a big theme of the pandemic, and a lot of media corporations are peddling that. But we've addressed that with our curriculum structure for this year for year 10s. Yes, the learning has been disrupted by pandemics and lockdowns and remote learning. It isn't the same as being in the classroom. So with that in mind, our core subjects for year 10, they're taught daily this year. So there are 10 English lessons, science lessons and math lessons per fortnight. With the option subjects, there are 5 lessons. That shouldn't be per week, that should be per fortnight. So your child is getting a very balanced diet of their academic and physical subjects as well. But they're also making sure that we can plug any gaps that might have existed and spot those as quickly as possible through our normal timetable delivery. This year we've also introduced a timetabled PSHE lesson each fortnight. This used to be on a carousel basis, on a rota basis where we drop a particular subject each week to deliver these sessions. But that's now a timetabled lesson within its own right, which gives valuable skills for the pupils in their future lives. One of which will be study skills, particularly as we enter spring and summer term in the lead up to in the lead up to mock examinations for year 10. Those PSHE lessons will be focusing on revision techniques and effective study skills. So enrichment, you would have received the email earlier this week saying that we've had to temporarily pause our enrichment offering and our extracurricular clubs. That is with regret that we've had to do that, but it was on advice from Public Health Wiltshire. We're hoping that's going to be a very temporary measure and that we can get back to doing the sports clubs and sports fixtures again against other schools, but also doing some of the more practical things like the drama rehearsals and the school productions. We're hoping that they can get going very, very soon. So please do accept our apologies that we've had to pause those, but they are something that we really want to get going as soon as possible and as soon as we're given the go-ahead from Public Health Wiltshire again. Enrichment isn't just the clubs though, it's also the house competitions, and we had a really successful house competition day last week. Hopefully your children came home buzzing after it and had a really enjoyable day. It was lovely to see us doing things other than lessons in school, because it's felt like far too long since we've had a day that we've been able to collapse the timetable and build those relationships and have those fun experiences that the school's famous for. The assemblies as well, that's also part of the enrichment. That ties into our school values tree that was on the original slide of the presentation this evening. Those assemblies and values are still being delivered at the moment. They're being delivered virtually, but they are a core part of who we are, because as we've said all along, it's not just the academic performance that we're hoping that the children do well in, but it's also developing them into well-rounded individuals. And the assemblies and the values that we promote are a key part of how we do that as a school. Trips and learning outside the classroom. We are going to be doing more domestic trips this year. Obviously, during the last 18 months, they've all been postponed. But we are now actively looking into the trips that we can provide this year. The ski trip is still happening in February. It's still scheduled, so those pupils that had paid up and are signed up to go on that trip, obviously it was postponed from last February, but that is still due to go ahead this February. And we're also looking at our offering for foreign trips from 2020, the academic year beginning 2022 as well. So I know the languages department are looking into doing the Barcelona trip. History department's looking into doing the Belgium battlefields trip as well. So all of those will get going again for next academic year for the foreign trips, and the domestic trips hopefully will start to happen again this academic year. And I'm sure you'll remember from your own school days that those are the types of things that really make your school experience special for you, and we want to get back to those as soon as possible. In terms of assessments, exams and study skills, obviously year 10 is a massive year for your children. It's the year before they do their public exams, their GCSEs. The last 2 years, year 11 obviously haven't had the traditional exam season that many year 11s would have before. And we do envisage that your children will probably be experiencing a much more traditional exam timetable than what's happened in the last 2 years. With that in mind, it's only right that we prepare them for that. And the way that that's happening is during the normal assessment routines that happen within the school timetable and curriculum. So that's within lesson time. There will be subject-specific assessments which focus on the skills and the content of the GCSE courses, skills particular to those subjects that are offering those assessments. As you know, we do stamped marking here at St Joseph's, where we highlight what is going well with a piece of work, what could be improved with that piece of work, and then the pupils give their responses. And that's where they have a chance to improve that work, which all leads into them being more successful within their actual exam seasons. We will be doing end of year exams this year. Year 10s, we're hoping that those mocks are going to be in the school hall, and they will have a 2-week programme of mock examinations to get them used to a traditional exam season. In order to help prepare them for that, a good few weeks in advance, we'll be giving revision booklets out to them. We'll be talking them through creating a revision timetable. And as mentioned earlier, during the PHSE lessons, we'll be going through study skills, revision techniques, note taking, all the different options that they could employ for their revision. It's a very personal thing, revision, so not one particular type is successful for everybody. So we'll be giving them exposure to lots of different techniques that they can use to help them be successful in the exams. In terms of your involvement and your teamwork with us, you will be informed of your child's progress at 3 different stages throughout the year. There will be 3 reports coming out to you. The reports will be in December, April, and also the end of the year in July. In those reports, similar to what we had last year, focuses will be identified in there for your child to improve on, and there will be also an opportunity to contact teachers on the back of that through our school website, and you'll be able then to have a dialogue with teachers to discuss the content of the report, be that through email or phone calls. There'll also be 1 traditional parents' evening. We will be doing those online this year. You'll be pleased to know that we've run a very successful one with Year 7s in the summer, also with Year 9s already this year. And probably the best piece of news for you on this, it avoids all the bun fighting that happens in the school hall. You're given online appointments, and because they're online and structured that way, the appointment you make is the appointment you get, and they're time limited as well. And they've proven to be quite an effective way of informing you of progress, and also obviously building that relationship. If possible, we'd love your children to be present on those online appointments too, so they can hear and contribute as well to the evenings. In terms of homework, the homework timetables have now been distributed to pupils. They should have received a sticker this week that they can stick into their planner. The timetables we use to ensure an even spread of homework. We've timetabled it so that they're not going to be overwhelmed and get 6 pieces of homework each evening. What it will tend to be is 2 to 3 pieces per evening, and in Year 10 we'd be looking at those pieces to be roughly sort of 15 to 30 minutes each piece. Show My Homework is how we're setting homework this year. That's obviously a great way for you to keep updated on what's been set and when the deadlines are. And also this year, if your children forget their password, they can opt to do a single sign-on, so signing on to Show My Homework using Office 365. So that is a really easy way. It's using their school login details to access Show My Homework. So if they do forget their password, that's probably the simplest way of getting back into Show My Homework. We'll also offer in the Homework Club this year on Tuesdays through to Thursdays. That is a club that is still running, and that is going to be in room 26. So if you would like your child to be involved in that, please do email me. I'll put my email address in the chat, and I'll make sure that your child has a place at the Homework Club. As we communicated last year, if there are any issues or problems with homework, we're not going down a punitive route. What we'll seek to do first of all is find out what the barriers are, and implement interventions to try and overcome those barriers. That hopefully will ensure that homework does get completed into a good standard and on time as well. Remote learning this year, we're hoping that we're not going to have to be sending pupils home like we did last year in terms of the bubbles. If children do have to isolate though because of a positive COVID test or being a close contact, remote learning will be set via Teams. And it will also through assignments in Teams rather than live lessons. The live lessons was reserved for when we were sending the bubbles and whole classes home. Work now will be set via assignments on Teams, and pupils will be able to access that so that they're not missing out on the learning happening in the classrooms. So without further ado now, I would like to hand over to Mrs. Blake. And I'll let her take over for her message for you and talk about some important dates this year.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. As Mr. Rooney said, my name is Mrs. Blake, Director of Learning, so responsible for your child's academic progress and also monitoring their mental health and well-being. So a couple of tips I wanted to talk to you about this evening in terms of getting through Year 10 successfully. It's really important that if a child has a concern with a particular subject, that they have those conversations as early as possible with their teachers. It's much easier to solve problems when we have honest and open communication. So do encourage children, if they have any concerns with a particular subject, that they do, book an appointment with that teacher just to have a informal discussion about how they're feeling. Also, we've got the amazing Mrs. Glover available to do careers meetings with your child. So if they are not sure about what it is they want to do when they leave school, they may be lacking motivation, Ms. Glover can arrange, we can arrange for you to have a meeting with Mrs. Glover, or for your child to have a meeting with her, where they can talk about what it is that their real passion is and ensure that they are motivated going forward with their GCSEs. Obviously, it's really important as well that your child is aware of their target grades. Teachers would have told them they will be in their books, but if they can just keep reminding them and be aware that they need to know where they're headed and what they're hoping to achieve. So in terms of important dates going forward, we've got parents' evenings, Mr. Rooney said, it will be on Wednesday the 10th of November, and we've also got the first set of reports coming out in the second half of December. Now, Year 10 specifically will also have their work experience opportunity. That will be in the summer term. It's absolutely a brilliant experience, and all schools offer it. But we are also offering virtual work experience placements. Now, this is available to all children. It's for those who really want to go above and beyond and make their CV look even better. So these virtual work experience are available online. So you can go to our careers portal on the website. I believe Mrs. Fenwick sent an email on Wednesday about these. And there's two websites, Springboard and also Speakers for Schools. And on there are lots of opportunities for virtual work experience. And these are on weekends and in half terms. Some tips when you do log in, you need to look at the minimum age, because some of them are 16 plus and others are 14 plus. Check the dates are not within school time so that the children can attend them, and also when the deadline for these are. But I'd really encourage everyone to go on these websites and have a look, because it really will just push your child's CV going forward for when they leave school. Obviously, we've got the Year 10 mock exams in the summer term as well. And that's it from me. Moving over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Blake. Good evening, everybody. Mr. Bazin speaking here. Lovely to see you all, and thank you so much for so many of you turning out this evening. I hope you're finding it informative so far. I've tried to reply to those questions thus far in the chat. Obviously, those issues that you've raised there we'll seek to resolve straight away. So the slide we're looking at the moment obviously reminds us about those times when things go very well in school, but also those times perhaps when things don't go so well. As Mr. Rooney said earlier, it's very much about support when it comes to sanctions, which we'll talk about in a second, but there are some changes to the system this year that we've implemented, and you no doubt perhaps are aware of those already if your son or daughter has been involved. Hopefully not too many of you have had those involvements. But the rewards, first of all, we continue to use those achievement points, which obviously may not be the marketable value for the young people as they get older in the school. But of course, they are still valued and teachers still do use them. And in order to get that weekly recognition in that next bullet point down, we obviously have at the end of the week, you've probably heard from your youngsters, not just our happiest moments of the week when we can sort of celebrate where perhaps members of the community, staff, students have done things that have made us smile, that have maybe lived out our values, also just some quite quirky moments, but also those occasions where people are recognised for their 100% attendance, for achieving achievement points, and therefore they can be entered into our Wheel of Fortune or our Wheel of Prizes, run by our very own Mr. Bartell and Mr. Ford. We've seen that as very much a fun way to end the week, and if your son or daughter hasn't yet been involved or won that yet, it just demonstrates that everybody is in that mix there, and we obviously expect people to do their best and mind their manners at all times and to try their best. Of course, we'll look towards, as Mr. Rooney said already, looking at those trips, those reward trips at the end of the year, and the culmination of those, obviously COVID allowing. But I think what we're starting to get towards as we get older now is those intrinsic values now. Yes, those achievement points are there.
Yes, we have in our corridor of values now, there's opportunities for the boys and girls, the young men and the young women's names to be etched into the, quite literally, the ceiling of the school, not just on the leaves as they be popped into there. We have, if you've looked onto the website, essentially a link to the tree of values, a tree that's growing down there, not literally, but obviously in terms of its artwork. The idea being, as Mrs. Ridley says in one of her well-known phrases, you never leave St. Joseph's. You're part and parcel of that family, that community. And we want to recognise, obviously, those young people who are living out those values by way of having, obviously, their names on a roll of honour board at the end as well. If you haven't seen that, I do encourage you to have a look at the website, where there are some lovely images of that. So what about those opportunities when things don't go so well? Of course, it's important that we preserve the right for all young people to learn. We obviously continue to use our sanctions and our strike system as we've always had, and our behaviour points, but we've introduced this year obviously a centralised detention system, which I just want to go through now. As I said, for the vast majority of you, this won't touch or won't affect you, but it seems to be working extraordinarily well this year. So, for example, having worked through the strike system, if a behaviour point is accrued by a young person, they'll serve 15 minutes in that centralised detention the very next day. 2, 30 minutes. 3, the centralised detention is the next day with the senior leader. We also have our escalation procedures that you can see at the bottom. So obviously a failure to attend will mean a 30-minute time next day, failure to attend a second time, and after school detention with the senior leaders. And I thank you for your support with that. That's so important. It is very much about working together as a team to get the best outcomes. And if that is your son and daughter, I don't believe it has been as yet, to my knowledge, certainly not those on the call, we'd like to keep it that way. Of course, obviously, if there are repeat offenders, we do take that very seriously, and our middle leaders will be involved. Obviously, Mrs. Blake in this instant, and if needs be, Mr. Bartell, Mr. Ford. In the event that I or Mr. Rooney or Mr. McGuinness or Mrs. Nobis, any other member of the senior staff, the head included, are called out to a classroom, as you can see there, the student then is immediately placed in after school detention. Okay, let's move forwards. Don't want to dwell too much upon, as I said, those sanction side of things. I like to think about catching the students being good, which they are this year. I'm very, very impressed with the work ethic this year as I've been going around the school. I was talking to Mr. Rooney about that today. He and I popped in to do what we call temperature checks. What that essentially means is it's what's the learning feeling like or looking like? Are the young people able to tell us what's going on in the lessons? And I'm very, very pleased with what's happening with Year 10 this year. So all credit to them and credit to you for supporting us. This slide I just want to pick up with you. You were seeing quite a lot in the press. Perhaps around Everyone's Invited, about those occasions where Ofsted have just done a big review about schools nationally, not just linked to sexual violence, sexual harassment, but linked to that idea of a zero tolerance approach to any form of bullying, be that race, gender or hate crime, or of course social media. I said to the young people in my first assembly, which wasn't virtual, that the technology that was put into their pockets was done so by their parents, but they did so, the parents this is, with responsibility expected. You and I know that we're living in an age where things happen and sometimes relationships break down, and that's okay. It's what we do about it when they do break down. But I want to reassure you this evening that we'll always seek to adopt a restorative approach to support the young people when things go wrong. We are, after all, a school. It is about education, and it's about education for life. Of course, we define bullying as several times on purpose, STOP, the acronym that's used nationally in schools. And I'll just remind you, as you'll see on the next slide, well, 2 slides time actually, that if you are concerned about a young person or something's happening, please do let us know. If we know about it, we can deal with it. We'll seek to investigate that. A falling out with a friend, a malicious one-off comment, doesn't constitute bullying, but of course, the key part around it is that we do something about it. We're not mind readers. We don't always get everything right. We're man and woman enough to recognise that, but it's what we do about it when things do go wrong in the community. Thank you, Mr. Rooney, for just popping that on there. Yeah, in case you're furiously trying to scribble down or screenshot what's on there, the presentation will be on the website afterwards. This slide here is a veritable rogues gallery, isn't it? You can see me on the left-hand side there of your screen there. This is our immediate safeguarding team. That's myself, obviously as deputy head and head of pastoral, but also the safeguarding lead. Mrs. Ridley, obviously head teacher but deputy safeguarding lead. Mr. Bartell, leader for behaviour, also involved in attendance but behaviour principally, and one of my deputy safeguarding leads. And the two ladies that I'm sure your sons and daughters have started to get to know in the course of the last year or so since they've been with us, Mrs. Snell and Miss Brignall. Miss Brignall, our pastoral manager, and again a deputy safeguarding lead, and Mrs. Snell, deputy safeguarding lead but wellbeing officer. And they've been really pulling up trees, not literally, but actually making great waves and intervening with lots of young people who maybe have found learning difficult, maybe classroom difficult. We've instituted, perhaps your son or daughter's taken advantage of this when things have got a wee bit tough, a pastoral classroom, if you like, an inclusion room, whereby there's a little bit of time out and then that opportunity to seek to resolve any difficulties they're having, whatever they may be. Which leads me quite nicely to the next slide. And as you can see there, obviously you've just seen the key staff. All the staff, though, can have things reported to them, so please do take that opportunity to get in touch with us. But our safeguard email is always there for you in term time. Of course, it isn't manned 24 hours a day, contrary to popular belief. I do need to sleep at times, but we will look at that and get back to things if there is something that you're concerned or worried about. And the stop email is there again, just to remind you about stop bullying. So our pastoral support, I'm really proud and privileged to have had the support of governors and to be able to expand the pastoral support team, not least in terms of the faces you saw on the last slide, thinking particularly there about Mr. Bartel, Miss Snell and of course Miss Brignall, but also Mr. Ford and our directors of learning. We've also been working very closely with the mental health support team and of course school nurses on site once a week for drop-in sessions, and even still during the COVID times. What I've been able to agree with Mrs. Wrigley and with governors is that we'll sanction those essential professionals that are working with our young people to support them. And so they will still be on site helping. So as I said, we have our mental health support team on site once a week, and they're picking up with obviously instances, cases, referrals where young people may be concerned, may be anxious, may be suffering the effects of the pandemic. We all have in different ways, I'm sure. We're all coming to terms with that. But they're here to help and to support us and to help us to onwards refer or give us advice and guidance if that's necessary. Of course, in part and parcel of that, Mr. Rooney's alluded already to the PSHE curriculum, is obviously our wellbeing curriculum as well, which sort of runs alongside the PSHE, but also those activities that some of the young people have taken part in last year, the Wild Wellbeing Days, for example, or other opportunities that are coming farther forwards. Miss Snell and I have been working with an organisation called the John Egging Trust. You may have heard of him. You might have seen him sort of on the news. In essence, when there was that disastrous air crash with the Red Arrows down in Sussex, he was one of those pilots. And as a result of that, what was founded was this charity with whom we're working to work with young people to build resilience, to build their confidence, to build their self-esteem. Alongside obviously their schoolwork. And I'm very excited to say that that project, I hope, will be able to get up and running fairly soon. If you have a look at our website, you'll be able to be directed to some helpful resources that I've placed on there if you're worried particularly around sort of people wellbeing, mental health. I'm sure you're aware of Mind, the national charity. They've got wonderful guides for parents there on all sorts of levels, not just around the sense of anxiety or self-harm, as another example perhaps, but also around ways in which that we can talk to our children. I don't mean that to sound patronising. I'm a father myself. There wasn't a manual when my son came along, and of course it's very, very different when they're your own. I've worked with tens of thousands of young people now in my 30 years of teaching, and everybody's different. And I even find obviously counsel and solace and good advice in those, as I said, those pamphlets, those websites, and there's also podcasts on there for you to look at. Equally, the Anna Freud Centre is very, very good too, particularly around pupil health and well-being. A last nod, if I may, to online safety. You'll be acutely aware, as I am, I alluded to it earlier, in terms of obviously mobile phone technology, the things that seem to be welded to certainly my son's hand or his ear. And obviously I monitor that as best I can. There are various sort of controls that we as parents can use. If you're not so sure about that, I encourage you to have a look at the NSPCC website or the ChildNet or the UK Safer Internet website. Lots and lots of very, very helpful, as I said, videos, podcasts, guides on what to do if there's been obviously reporting going on, how to report things if there is online abuse. Please do tell me about that at school via the safeguard email. We'll do our level best to investigate that. It is indeed an expectation now of the new Keeping Children Safe in Education document that came out in 2021. We're not the police, and nor are the police necessarily seeking to criminalise young people. What we are seeking to do is to help to re-educate and to understand what is and is not acceptable. Of course, that's part and parcel of our RSE, our Relations, Sex and Education curriculum, and our PSHE curriculum as well, where we look at these issues. I do hope that's been informative for you. I hope you managed to keep up. If you've nodded off, I apologise. Now's the time to wake up because we're about to finish, and it's your chance to ask any questions. So do feel free to unmute yourself if you wish to do that. I think I've answered as many of those questions as the others were talking in the chat around the homework timetables particularly. I'll check in a second to see if they're just waiting to be in or have gone in this afternoon into the form folders. And if not, then we'll just chase that up for you. Many, many thanks for attending this evening. It's opportunity now for questions, which we'll deal with. So do unmute yourself or post something in the chat if you wish to. We haven't frozen. I'm still here, just in case you're wondering there. It's absolutely fine if there is nothing. Excuse me. Forgive me, yes, I've just spotted something here. Thank you for that, Ms. Austin, around the behaviour point detention information on the school website. It will be. The reason why it isn't at the minute is the policy is waiting to be ratified by governors, but obviously I can pop it on there in draft format, but if that will be helpful, certainly I will make sure that that's up there for you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Shaw. I spotted that earlier in the chat. As I said a moment ago, the homework timetables will chase up for you and see where they've got to. Okay. I advise that if he checks in the morning with his tutor to see if it's in the form folder. If it isn't, we'll get a message out on email as to when it's coming out. I hope that's answered that for you. Okay, I'm just pausing for a second. Wonderful. Absolutely. And that's a very pertinent point. If parents can't see that or aren't looking at the chat there, yes, it does help to be able to have that discussion and that chat with a young person. And I really encourage you to download that Share My Homework app if you haven't done so. Just refresh that. Team Satchel have made some changes to that. So do refresh that from obviously the App Store. And if you aren't sure about how to log in to look at your view, you can see obviously in real time what your sons and daughters have had set for homework. They have a slightly different view to you, and of course there's a reason for that, and the chief reason behind that is because what Share My Homework Team Satchel don't allow parents to do, of course, is to, I'm going to say this, but take it the way I intend it, to do the homework for the child. So the quizzes, for example, will be obviously on there, but obviously you won't be able to see that on your bit. You'll just need to be able to see it's been set, because some of those submissions are done online. But by all means, have a look over shoulders. I'm sorry, students, if you're on the call, sat in the room listening to obviously mum and dad hearing this, please don't take it as a big brother's watching you. It's very much that essence, as both Mr. Rooney and Miss Blake said earlier. It's very much about us helping you to be the best version of you, to get to where you want to be at the end of obviously your year 11. You're at the beginning part of your year 10, in my opinion, now after the pandemic, and we're starting to obviously increase the workload, quite rightly, but keeping a weather eye on that. But obviously you need to do your bit too. Okay, anything else in the chat? Have I missed anything, colleagues? In which case I will bid you all a lovely evening. It looks like a late Indian summer out there, actually. We're quite blessed with that, and long may that continue. I thank you again on behalf of Mrs. Ridley and the governors and the staff here this evening and the tutors for your attendance tonight. It's greatly appreciated. We can't do it without you. I know you can't do it without us, but you are so integrally important to the operation, and I can't thank you enough. Many, many thanks. Good night.